Have you ever wondered how a single moment, just a few seconds, can completely define a person's life? Well, we're going to dive into that, looking at the incredible true story of how one man conquered a deep-seated fear. This all comes from the autobiographical account of William O. Douglas, and trust me, it's about a whole lot more than just swimming. We're starting with this quote because, wow, it gets right to the heart of everything. This story isn't just about the physical act of drowning. It's really a deep look at that fundamental human struggle against the terror that our own fear can create. So, every great fear has an origin story, right? Let's go back and see exactly where this all began, how a simple, almost common childhood incident planted the seed for a phobia that would haunt William Douglas for years. You see, the big traumatic event at the pool wasn't actually the beginning. The real root of his fear started way earlier, when he was just a little kid, maybe 3 or 4 years old. He was at the beach in California with his dad, and what should have been a fun day turned terrifying when a huge wave just knocked him flat and swept over him. That feeling of being powerless against the water, that's what planted the terror in his heart. Now, let's fast forward a bit. The local Yakima River was known for being super dangerous. His mom was always warning him about it, constantly reminding him of the people who had drowned there. So with that river being a total no-go, the one place that seemed safe to learn was the YMCA pool. And isn't it ironic? The safe place is exactly where his life would change forever. Picture this. He gets to the pool, and it's totally empty. The water is still and quiet, kind of like a big, clean bathtub. But that peaceful image, it was just the calm before the storm, the prelude to what he calls simply the misadventure. And these are the words that kick it all off. Out of nowhere, this big 18-year-old kid, a big bruiser of a boy as he calls him, sees young, skinny Douglas sitting there all by himself. And with that one single taunting question, he just picks him up and chucks him right into the deep end. So the pool was 9 feet deep. Now for a kid who can't swim, that's a long way down. It's a real measurable distance. But when stark terror grips you, perception changes everything. And this is just the power of fear at work, you know? As he's sinking, his lungs feeling like they're about to explode, that 9 feet just stretches and stretches in his mind until it feels like an impossible 90. Time slows down, distance warps, and the swimming pool turns into a bottomless pit. Even in the middle of all this panic, his brain is still trying to work. He actually comes up with a pretty rational plan. Once my feet hit the bottom, I'll push off with all my might and pop up to the surface like a cork. But reality had other ideas. He didn't bob up. He rose so slowly, swallowing water, his whole plan failing right from the start. So, plan B, paddle to the edge, kick your legs, but his body just wouldn't listen. It's like the connection between his brain and his limbs was just severed. Absolute terror had taken over, turning his legs into paralyzed dead weights. He was literally a prisoner inside his own body. He manages to break the surface, but only his eyes and nose come out. He can't get a breath. He's flailing with his hands, trying to grab something, anything, but it's useless. It felt like this huge, powerful force was just pulling him back down again, and then a third time. Just a complete, helpless nightmare. And then it all just stopped. The struggle, the panic, the terror, it all just faded away into this weirdly peaceful blackness. As he lost consciousness, he said it felt like his mother was tucking him in. And with that thought, the curtain of life fell. Now, you'd think being rescued from the pool would be the end of the story, right? But it wasn't. Not even close. In a lot of ways, surviving the drowning was just the beginning of a long, haunting aftermath, where fear became his shadow. For years, this thing just followed him everywhere. It didn't matter what he was doing. He tried to go on a fishing trip, go canoeing, boating, all the things he wanted to enjoy. And like clockwork, that terror would just bubble up and take complete control. He described it as an icy horror that would grip his heart and his legs would go stiff and paralyzed all over again. It just stole the joy out of everything. So after years of being a prisoner to this fear, he finally just had enough. He made a decision. One October, he decided he was going to fight back. He went out, hired an instructor, and started this long, slow, deliberate process of taking his fear apart. And the instructor was brilliant. He didn't just try to teach him how to swim. He literally deconstructed swimming and rebuilt it for him piece by piece.
First, he put a rope and pulley on him for safety, and they just went back and forth across the pool for weeks just to build confidence. Then came breathing, practicing hundreds of times. Then just kicking, retraining those legs that refused to work. And only after every single piece was mastered did the instructor finally put it all together.
But here's the thing. Even after the instructor said, "Okay, you can swim now," Douglas knew the real fight was in his own head. When he'd swim alone, these little flashes of the old terror would creep back in. But now he had a weapon. He could actually talk back to the fear. He'd say, "Trying to scare me, eh? Well, here's to you. Look." And then he'd swim another length just to prove it wrong.
But you know, a swimming pool is a controlled environment. The final exam, the ultimate test to prove he had finally conquered this thing, well, that had to happen out in the wild, in the open water, all by himself.
And this is the moment of pure triumph. He goes up to Warm Lake, high in the meadows, dives into the cold water, and swims all the way across to the other shore, and back. And as he's swimming, he just starts shouting with joy. And the mountain, Gilbert Peak, echoes his shout right back at him. He'd finally conquered it.
So what did he really learn from this whole ordeal? Well, he gained this profound insight, something that you can only really understand if you've faced that kind of stark terror and come out the other side. He had experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror of fearing death, and that changed his perspective on everything.
He finally understood, on a deeply personal level, that universal truth. It's the same thing his friend President Roosevelt famously said. Because he had faced the absolute worst of his fear and beaten it, his will to live just grew with this incredible new intensity.
And the end result of all this? Total freedom. The handicap that had held him back for so long was just gone. He felt released, free to finally live his life, to hike the trails he wanted, to climb the mountains he dreamed of, and to just brush aside fear like it was nothing.
And that kind of leaves us with a big question to think about, doesn't it? His story is such a powerful example of human resilience. It really makes you wonder, what's the deep water in your own life? What's the great fear that you've had to learn how to navigate?